Gonna get started here in just a second. Welcome. If you are on TikTok, make sure you tap the screen, share the live. We're gonna get started. Tonight's topic is going to be what to do when your inner child panics. So this is an actual excellent topic, real live experience I had today. So we are going to talk this one through, and this is why I'm sitting by the fireplace instead of standing up with the whiteboard behind me. But you can see some of my artwork in the background, so that's kind of cool. Okay. So for those of you, it's your first time joining, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I help people go from being in a dark place, feeling anxious, depressed, to a happier place. That being said, sometimes this healing journey is not always happy. Okay, there are going to be some challenging times, and when you start to dig some things up and you start getting down to some of those deeper layers, it is normal, it is natural, it is supposed to not feel good. Because there's old wounds that you're pulling up and picking apart, and so sometimes that's going to be pretty painful when that comes up, and that's okay. And what I want you to take away from the training today is to know that there is a process that you can get through it, and it's not always about the path to happiness. Means you have to sometimes go through quite a bit of stuff, right? Hi Ray, welcome. So excuse me, we're gonna dive in, and how I help people is I share my experience, strength, and hope, and I share what tools I've used to help get through some of these processes and some of these feelings. I'm doing well today, Ray. How are you? So I've had some challenges up and down today, so if my energy is a little bit lower, please understand. When I share some of the stuff, you'll understand why. And just because you're going through these things doesn't mean you can't be happy. And these are actually normal, natural. Think of a child, if they, get upset about something earlier in the day, and then later in the evening they're all happy and bubbly. Do we question if a child is okay or if there's something off with them? No, we don't, because we know that children feel their emotions in rapid succession, and they can be up one minute, down the next, and that is normal, and that's okay. We don't hold it against them. Do that for yourself as well as you're going through this healing process. Okay, so I'll be talking today a lot about what it feels like, in particular when your inner child has this panic attack. And I'll describe my experience, and hopefully you guys can relate to it. So, and I've got to try, it's very hard to describe an emotion that's what's going on inside of you. And it can be small little things that kind of set it off, right? And it just kind of seems to come out of nowhere. And if you're not aware of what's going on, you can end up having a panic attack. And what I like to think of, instead of I am having a panic attack, what has happened is something has triggered an emotion that has been stuck from my past, and it is more my inner child jumps into the driver's seat, and it's my inner child that is actually having the panic attack. And oftentimes what I end up feeling like is I'm a passenger, the adult logical passenger in the car, while the toddler or the 10-year-old or the teenager is driving. And none of them has their license, and it gets pretty friggin' scary sometimes. But that being said, so one of the things that had happened today is it triggered up this fear in me. Hello. It triggered up this fear in me, and I could feel the inner child part of me just going over and over and over, and it was kind of like watching somebody else. So, and this is something that's common for people who've been through sexual abuse. You have varying degrees of splits that end up happening depending on the abuse that you went through. And it can be as extreme as you lose time and you become a completely different person, or you just kind of see, the adult version of yourself and the inner child version of yourself. And so today it felt like I had this like feeling that came up that was overwhelming around money and needing stuff, and it was like this completely unrealistic, nothing based in logic kind of feeling of this like I need, and it was like this panic that kind of came up and it overwhelmed me, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Because it's like, on one side I was listening to the voice of like all of these feelings and emotions that were coming up, and I'm like, logically I know that's not true, and I try to reason with myself, and that ends up not being something that I can do. Why? Because feelings actually have to be felt. They do not make sense. They're not supposed to, until you can get to what is the root cause of what is driving that feeling. And so when that happens, what I want you to pay attention to is what are the things that the inner child actually wants to say. Thank you, Papa. So when, sorry, I just realized. I just realized what I did there. Okay. Okay. So you'll have these things that are emotional and they're unreasonable. They don't have any grounding in logic. And there are these feelings of different things that might come up in your head. It's like, so I had this panicked feeling of like, I need to make more money. I need to make more money. And I've had this come up in varying degrees throughout my life when, times were tough and stuff like that. And it was like this surge of urgency and panic that kind of came up, followed by another voice or word track of, if I don't do this, they're gonna throw me away. And I was like, that's interesting. We're gonna get back to that. And then followed by another one, if I have no money, I have no worth. And I was like, okay. So having to go through and feeling all of those emotions that went with those issues that were coming up, even though logically I know that's not true, and I know what I would say to a client to help them through the exact thing, that does not help when your inner child is having a full-blown panic attack and you just have to let them cry it out kind of thing. So that's what I did. I cried it out. I walked around. I'm still trying to function as an adult and, tried to do some menial tasks and did those kind of things. But when I allowed myself to feel those feelings, and the funny thing is this came up, I had done a meditation earlier, and for some reason I had this visual image of like a cyst popping, and it was like it oozed all this gross stuff out, and I was like, and then shortly thereafter I end up having a panic attack about this other stuff. And it's like, so your body and your mind will start to tell you when you are ready to bring this stuff up and out. It's got to come out of your system. When this happens, you have to feel those feelings to the fullest extent so that you can get them out of your system. And afterwards, you're probably going to feel a little bit raw, a little bit vulnerable. I used to talk about this like when I was in therapy, and it often felt like, when I came out one of those deeper sessions where we kind of really got to some like aha moments, you kind of walk out of the office those times where you feel like you have no skin on you, like you're just raw, right? And that's kind of how it feels. The thing is while I was going through and processing the emotions, all of a sudden some pennies started to drop. So things started to click in place. It's like, Oh, so that is what's been holding me back. And I had different flashes of different memories that came up because I've gotten so good at being able to understand that when these emotions come up, I know it's not what's going on today. Whatever is going on today was basically the irritant that it allows you to know that there's a wound there that needs to be healed. And it kind of like it picks off the scab, but there's still stuff underneath that's got to come out. You got to clean out that wound. The only way to do it is you got to let that gunk out, right? So, so going through that, understanding, letting that panicky inner child of mine have a voice and what it is that she was feeling, because the problem when you grow up in an environment where there's abuse, where there's neglect, where there's violence, where there's sexual abuse, all of this kind of stuff, it is not actually safe for you to feel those feelings in the moment. So what ends up happening is they get your denial mechanism kicks in, and you kind of go into this mode of doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt. Why? Because your body's too busy trying to survive the actual situation. If this happens over a long period of time and it happens frequently enough, you become so good at this you don't even realize that's what you're doing. And so you can end up turning your emotions off before you even register that, hey, this is a problem. And because of that, eventually you end up having to pay that emotional bill, right? And so sometimes the emotional bill collector comes around and says, okay, you need to feel this piece, because in order for you to move to that next phase and grow and do that next thing, you need to get rid of the stuff that's in there that's holding you back, right? And as you can imagine, so if you have, if you're in entrepreneurship or you're in sales or a business owner or anything else like that, and you start having the business isn't doing well, you're not closing deals, you're not closing sales, you know what it is that you need to do, you have skills, you've done it before, and all of a sudden it's not working. So of course the natural inclination is to start looking at external sources. Maybe the marketing's off, maybe the setter didn't do something, or maybe I screwed up, and you kind of go through all these different variables, and the majority of the time it's that. But once you've eliminated all the obvious possibilities, it's like, okay, did you go through the script, you went everything, you understand what's going on, there's nothing broken in the process, the call sounds good, but for some reason you still are not able to do what it is that you need to do. And usually that is an indicator that some inner work needs to be done, and there's something there that's holding you back. So in the matter of, so for this, it's like money came up for me, and having my self-worth tied in money. And even though I've done a lot of work around this, it still comes up, and I was like, shit, okay, there's more here, and I need to understand what's going on. But I started to think of different things, and the correlations aren't always directly connected, so it's a little bit challenging at first to start to learn how to piece these things together. So a couple of other things in other previous work that I've done that I knew that I had some issues of. Why? So one of the word tracks that would go on in my head is, why bother having anything if it just gets taken away? So one of my abuser's favorite tricks was to give me something that I really wanted and then take it away, or would tell me that I can't have it. I'd watch my brother get all of the things that he wanted. So there was this thing at Christmas time. So at Christmas time, I repeatedly asked for only one thing every year. And every year I asked for a piano, and I never got the piano. Every year it was always, hey, it's too expensive, we don't have room for it, blah, 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 all this other stuff. What else do you want? And I didn't want anything else. I wanted the piano, and I wanted to learn how to play that. And it never ended up happening. And every year I would get asked. And every year I would watch my brother. He'd put a whole list of things together. Now his were more easy to attain. But he always got everything that was on his list. And there was one Christmas, I remember, I thought I finally got, like, they got me an electric keyboard, which is just like a piano. So, I was cool with that. I was all excited. I could see this big, long present, had my name on it. It was under the tree, and I was really, really excited. It was heavy. And I remember opening it, and I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach because it was actually a desk. And they're like, before that, they were hyping it up. It's like, oh, you're going to love this. You're going to be so excited. And of course, what am I thinking? I'm finally getting the piano. And I felt like Charlie Brown when Lucy goes and takes the football, and she, like, just as he goes to kick it, she takes it away. And it's like, that happened repeatedly throughout my childhood. So what that ends up translating to as an adult is that you start to develop this belief that you cannot get the things that you want. So, and add in the fact that growing up in the home that I grew up in, it was always, there was never enough money. There was never enough money. We were always short on bills. And if I wanted anything, then I was asking for too much. And the fact that I had asked for the stuff at Christmas, for the piano, and that never happened, was another challenge. And I even went so far as a kid that I created a whole tally sheet and how we could break it down. I would cut out articles from the Penny Saver of, hey, here's a piano, this one's only 100, or this one's 200, and it's like, yeah, but we can't get it. And it's like, I get it now. That would have been a challenge, but at the same time, it seemed like no matter what solution I tried to provide, it still didn't allow me to get to the end result. And I'm like, oh snap, I can see a correlation with some of the stuff that I've been dealing with, some current challenges that actually tie back to that original wounding kind of thing. And that is what's important. So 20% is what's going on today, because as an adult, everybody else is going to be looking at you going like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Why can't you just do the thing that you're supposed to do? And it's because you have this other anchor, this chain that you're tied to from the past. And until you follow that chain down to its core, where it started, and that's where you end up having to break the chain. You start realizing, oh, it's not because I can't do the thing today. It's because I have all of these emotions from that child part. And when I start to want for anything, or if there's this one thing that I really, really want, and you have that fear build up in you, it's like, well, it's going to be a repeat of the past, because we start looking for evidence to prove that our previous experiences will happen again, because that gives us a sense of safety. It gives us a sense of control over the situation. And when we go to try and change things, of course, it triggers all these fears to come up in us, and internally with ourselves, we don't even need anybody else trying to tell us to pull us back in the bucket, crabs in the bucket or anything. No, because they were already anchored in, they were already rooted in back from our childhood if we're already not able to move forward with something. And tracing that back allows you, when you start making that connection, it's like, oh, it's not what's going on today that's really holding me back. It's all this other stuff. When I realize what's going on there, I can self-soothe, I can give my inner child that reassurance, and I can change the past by changing how I respond today. And that's how you start to heal, because you have to give yourself what that child actually needed back then. And I remember early in my recovery, one of the things that I did do is I finally did go break down and I bought a piano. But the funny thing is even though I bought the piano and I felt like it was a victory and everything, and I had it all set up and it was in my apartment that I had, I never played it. Very rarely did I play it. I was actually too afraid to play it because I hadn't done enough healing work then to really understand why I was too afraid to play it. Is because of that other fear that kind of came up today, is that if I show that I actually want this, if I show that this is important to me, that got weaponized against me. And so what ended up happening is I just learned not to have any wants. So when you come into closing or entrepreneurship, you have to start looking at things that you want to be able to manifest and things that you want in your life so that you can call that in and allow yourself to be able to receive that energy. But you end up having these blocks because of these things that happened in the past. And it was because of the thing that came up for me today. I put two and two together and I was like, oh, that's what's going on. So all of these things that I am wanting and hoping for, it triggers up this fear response within me that causes me to feel like I can't do it. And you end up doing these self-sabotaging behaviors or stuff like that that end up happening, that you're like, oh. So if you see somebody in self-sabotage mode or what appears to be self-sabotage mode, be very, very kind with them. Be very gentle with them, because they are not doing that because it's a logic thing, that they just need to follow the process. They just need to jump in and do the thing, because if they could have done that, they already would have. There is something so much deeper there that needs to happen. And sometimes it's not just one chain, there's a couple that are kind of intertwined. So and that kind of brought up another memory of I had a cat, Miss Mew, and so that even when the rare occasions where I did get what I wanted, so I got a cat and I was really happy, I love that cat, nobody else could touch that cat but me. It was a little bit wild. It also liked to attack my abuser. And because of that, my abuser decided that it was time for the cat to go. And so, of course, he couldn't just get rid of the cat. He had to turn it around and make it that I was not taking care of the cat. So it was my fault why the cat was being put down. And I was devastated. And so those kind of things, it's like, oh, I hadn't realized that my cat and having my cat put down in childhood tied into a money issue. A lot of times that or being able to get the things that you want or receive the things that you want. Hey, Esker. So this is why it's challenging sometimes to be able to tie these pieces together. But what you have to tie together is that feeling, that emotion, and being able to pay attention to what's going on in your body, because that will connect you. Where else in your past have you actually felt this same way? And when you listen, there might be a variety of different times. So it might be one time when you were a teenager, one time when you were 5 years old or 10 years old, or whatever it is. And just kind of going back and just try to go back to whatever the earliest memory is that you remember that happening. So another one was I had a favorite dress. Now, not all of these things are abuse per se, right? So I'm sure that the reason my mom made me give away my favorite Snow White dress to my cousin was because I had outgrown the dress and it would now fit my cousin. So to her, it's a logical decision, but she didn't understand the emotional attachment that I, as a child, had to that dress. Snow White was my favorite Disney character, and we had got this dress when we had gone to California, and we went to, is it Disneyland or Disney World there? I can't remember. Anyway, whatever Disney is in California, we had gone there, and I was able to get this dress, and it was a beautiful dress. It was white, and then it had all of the Snow White characters on the dress, and it was really, really pretty. And having to give that away was really, really painful, because part of the reason why I got that dress is because every time we went to go get my picture taken with Snow White at the park, she was always running for a costume change. So again, logically, as an adult, you can look at that as like, okay, the actress is going for a costume change. It's not a personal thing. But a child is taking that as a personal slight. It's like, oh my God, my idol, Snow White, is actually running away from me, and I can't get my picture. I took it personal. And I was devastated. So in order to comfort me, they bought me this dress. And then to have to give that away. So there's layers of emotions and stuff like that that get tied in as you're a child. And a child doesn't have the cognitive ability to make logical decisions about the things that are happening. So even if you haven't gone through trauma, there are certain decisions, certain behaviors that you operate on today that are rooted in decisions that you made as a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, whatever it is, wherever you learn that lesson. And this is why it's so important to do that inner work, especially if you're feeling stuck in any particular area of your life, or if you're feeling fear around something that's going on in your life. Because there's some decisions that have been made in the past that are preventing you from being able to do the things that you actually wanted to. And when you trace and find the root cause of it, that's when you can start to make different decisions, and then it no longer has that hold on you. It doesn't hold you back anymore, and it can't keep you there. Assuming that you, first of all, physically release those emotions, right? So if you need to cry, I'm not saying every time you have to cry. Sometimes it can be like shaking your hands out, moving around. Sometimes you can get it out just by journaling, and kind of look back and go, man, that really sucked. And it doesn't have to be a big production. But if it does feel like that and you need to, then that is important to let it out as fully as if you are that actual child crying, okay? Because children, they go all in when it comes to emotions, right? They don't do things half. They go all in until they start to learn to regulate a little bit more, right? But you have to give yourself that permission so that you can feel it. And the more that you can feel it to the fullest, then the easier it is for you to release it, and then it no longer has that control over you, because now you've taken and you've switched it to 20% is a trauma response, and it may come up again if you have a similar situation that you're in and it triggers or rubs on that fear, it may come up again, but now it'll only be a 20% issue, it won't be an 80% issue. So if you find that you're overreacting for a particular situation, that everybody else around you is kind of like, why, like, what's going on with you? Like, because this clearly doesn't, like, the punishment doesn't fit the crime kind of thing, right? So when those emotions kick in too, you have to know that it doesn't matter what kind of strategies or logic you try to deploy. You can do all of those tactics, but you can't solve emotional problems with logic. You have to do it with comfort. You have to give security so that whatever emotions can just wash through. They don't get stuck. They don't get stagnant. They don't cause you to do things that you don't want to do, right? So being aware of those kind of things, journaling that out, making those connections is truly where you can start to break those chains. And looking at where those, anytime you have those intense reactions, Maybe somebody else is telling you that you're overreacting. Maybe you think that you're overreacting. And sometimes you may feel like, I don't even know where this is coming from. It's like, so feel those feelings, let them go, write that out, and give that inner child a voice to whine, to cry, to whatever they've been feeling. So they may, you may find yourself saying, no matter what I do, it's never enough, or you're not allowed to want for things, or even all the smarts and good grades that I had, they didn't matter, right? My brother, I saw him get rewarded. So how that correlated in today is I was okay. I was accustomed to watching everybody else win, and I didn't win. And it was like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about me. Why? Because I've been conditioned so much from childhood that A, I'm not allowed to win. B, if I did win, then I was gloating, and I was boasting, and I was a terrible winner, all of this kind of stuff. It was always negative. If I won, it was a problem. It was a real fucking problem. And it's like, okay, so I guess I'll not win, because the thing is when I tried, I'd often win. And so then it was like I was showing off, and I was trying to be a topper or something like that. It was just always looked at very negatively. So I learned not to try so hard, because I had to give other people a chance so that they were allowed to win, because it's not all about you, Tina. And those were messages I got a lot as a child. So when those things came up, it's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. This isn't got anything to do with what's going on today, because inside I could feel this logical part going, well, that's not true. You have value whether or not you have money. You have value and worth, and it's not true that no matter what you do, it's never enough. That's not true, right? So what happens when you're having this panic attack is you are believing the lies. And if it's from a spiritual standpoint, then that is, believing the lies of the enemy, and the devil will plant seeds of doubt and cause you to be afraid, right? So, and it's funny because all of these things sometimes come in waves, and they come really fast when you are open to and ready to do that healing. It'll come in waves, and it'll be sometimes a lot. And if your first time through it, not having anybody guiding you through that can be really scary, but this is not my first rodeo. So I know exactly what it is I need to do, how I need to release those things, document those things. And I understand. It's like, and as soon as I made the connection of where the emotions I was feeling today was coming from, I was like, oh, okay, this actually has no power over me today. And it was like, then I was able to calm down, self-regulate, breathe, and carry on with my day, so that I pushed myself to do something. So like I did my workout, but I was also gentle enough to give myself a little bit of space, that it took a little bit longer, like coming on the live. So be gentle with yourself when you've had a big release, when you've gone through and processed a lot of emotions, because it's exhausting sometimes when you process these emotions, right? Because you've been carrying that heavy burden inside of you for however many years. And although you may feel raw when you do it, like you've got no skin left on you, you will also feel like you've been freed, that you don't have this heavy chain, this heavy weight on you anymore. And that's how you know you've gotten to the core of the issue as well. Okay? Yeah. It's also helpful to write out any of the negative negative voices or negative phrases or common sayings that you heard as a child around these particular issues. Because then you can start to see who planted that seed, who basically almost like it's like speaking a curse over you, right? So like the you're only good for work, and sometimes that could be you. Sometimes that's you making a certain decision as a child. Maybe the only way you got approval, attention, was if you were working, and that was true for me. Or for whatever reason, I had so even babysitters and stuff like that, they would do things to use me because I don't know, I had this sweet innocent look about me. So then they would do things like they'd encourage me to I had to close, and I was a closer back then, I guess. But she didn't want to spend the money that my mom had given her to get my picture taken with Santa. She didn't want to spend that. She wanted to do that for something else. She wanted to, you know, I don't know if she wanted to go to the arcade or something, the food court or something like that. But so she told me, she's like, go up there and say you don't actually have any money, but you really, really want Santa to take your picture with Santa, and be all sad looking and everything. So she coached me on what it is I needed to do. So I went up there and did that, and I got my picture taken with Santa for free. And then she got to spend the money on what she wanted, right? But it's like, that's a simple little thing of little ways that it's like, okay, that I would get used for those kind of things. And it's like, oh, okay. And the same one, she did something else, is she's like, okay, we need to make some money. So in some ways this is kind of entrepreneurial, but at the same time, she wasn't, she didn't have high integrity. So Christmas carols, so I could sing, and I was pretty good for Christmas carols. So she was like, we're gonna go door to door, and we're going to say that we're raising money, and we're gonna sing Christmas carols and see what people give as donations. And we actually made quite a bit of money. It wasn't for our donations, other than our own. So, but again, this was her idea, and I followed the lead. So, being able to pay attention to some of these maybe not so traumatic kind of experiences, but they're still shaping events from your childhood that can impact and hold you back in today. So how could those kind of things be held back? Well, if you have a belief, like I do, or did, around you are only good for work, then you are, if money comes to you too easily, you're not going to trust it, you're not going to accept it, you're going to try to divert it and block it. You will have an energetic block from being able to receive it because you feel like you haven't worked for it hard enough. And it's like, oh shit. Okay, well, no wonder some of this stuff hasn't been working for me. Okay. Now I understand where that's coming from. Now I can make a different decision because I have broken that chain, and now I can see what's different. The fact that I'm always used or tricked into doing things that are not good. Well, it's like if you sense that manipulation, or somebody tells you to do certain things, and then you're like, wait a minute, this can't be, like, you know, can we really get money this easy? Is this on the up and up, right? So you kind of have those feelings that end up coming up, and it's like, oh, okay. And this is where you can decide, it's like, okay, that is not the same situation. It may feel like the same situation, but it is not the same situation, and here's why. And now you can comfort that inner child part of you that's like, oh no, if we do this, we're going to get in trouble again, right? Because, of course, these things that had happened, the Santa Claus and the Christmas caroling escapades, they got found out, and the babysitter didn't get in trouble. I got in trouble. And I was like, wait, it wasn't even my idea. She told me what to do, but you're older, you should know better. So there's another one, right? Which I wasn't technically older than my babysitter, but I should have known better. So, um, so this also leads me to the ridiculous levels of honesty and trustworthiness that I have, because I was always getting in trouble for stuff that I didn't actually do, and I was always the first one to come running whenever I did something wrong, because I didn't want them to think I was trying to hide it like my brother or my cousins did, because they always got in so much shit because they would lie, they would try to cover things up, and my grandmother was fierce in that she'd be like, if I catch you in a lie, it's going to be worse. If you tell the truth, you're still going to get in trouble, but it's not going to be as bad. So I opted for that option every friggin' time. So I'd be the first one to come running and say exactly what it is that I did wrong, and I'm very open, upfront, honest. Maybe it's autistic kind of tendencies, I don't know, but yeah, so I did those things quite a bit, carried that, helped me a lot in my career, because if anything, that people understood that when I was saying things that I was actually speaking the truth, and that they could trust me. Like, you know, it took a few times though. People don't trust me at first because they think it's abnormal, and it's like, oh, if she's being this open about this kind of stuff, what else is she hiding? Because nobody's this open, right? And so I get that a lot until they realize it's like, oh no, she actually means what she said, and she's not actually hiding any other shit. Oh, well, damn. And this is how I know. So when people start throwing shit at me, it's like, what are you up to? Because we often assume, and we assume that people operate the same way as we do. And oftentimes that's not the case. So I get stuck and I get caught on things a lot because I assume people are operating, that they're open, they're honest, they're not telling any lies. I'm not saying that I never tell lies. I probably do more errors of omission than anything, more to spare people's feelings, or I'm in denial about how it is that I actually feel, because I'm more in the fear people-pleasing mode. So I will fall into saying what I think you want me to say rather than what I actually feel. So that is something that I've been aware of, and I catch myself in that. And the easiest way to prevent that from happening is that when you catch yourself doing it, go back and renegotiate, tell them how you actually feel, and say, okay, this is what I said. I know I said I'd do this, but this is what was going on, and let's change this, right? So when I did that kind of stuff, then it was a lot better for me. Okay. Some more of the negative ones that would come up. I often got told that I was greedy or selfish to want anything, that we didn't have enough, or if I saw something and I was like, oh, that I really want that, this is great, and I often got told, no, that's not yours, that's for your brother, that's for your brother. You need to understand, he's younger, he needs this, right? I was the one that had to be understanding. So, and I don't say all of this stuff to go, oh, woe is me or poor me or anything like that. These are things that I'm calling out because I catch myself still operating in that mode of like, oh, I shouldn't want for anything, that my needs aren't important. That I should consider everybody else's needs. Like, they need it more than I do, so it doesn't really matter. And then next thing I know, I'm going completely without, and then that becomes a problem, right? So, yeah, being able to understand where some of these things come from in the past, and even if they aren't directly tied to a trauma per se, they can be decision-making events that create beliefs that can end up holding you back in your current life. And this is why it's important you don't have to dig up every particular trauma that you've been through. It may or may not be affecting your current life today. Whatever is blocking your current life, though, today, it's usually 20% is from today, and then the past is 80%. And being able to trace those chains back to figure out where it started is where you break that, and then you're able to make different decisions about how that affects you. And you're not being held back emotionally by the past. This is where you become free, because now that you can look at that from an adult perspective, from a safe, secure perspective, you can now say, oh, that was just what I thought was happening, or I made that particular decision as a 4-year-old, as a 5-year-old, right? Now I can see things more clearly, and it's not about that. And if it is something that is important to you, like say the piano thing, where I went and I purchased a piano as an act of being able to heal that need that I wanted to show my inner child I could get that. But then I was a bit of a goof and didn't let her play with it. So, and now I don't have that piano. But, so those are little things to be aware of, to understand that if you are having an extreme emotional reaction to something that's going on today, and it's not something that's actually happening in front of you, like you feel this disconnected anxiety for something and you're like, what's going on? I feel all these anxious feelings, because a lot of times we don't make that connection. Being able to trace that back, ask yourself, where else have I felt this way in the past? And it's not the same action, it may not be the same circumstance. It's like, well, I've never been in this particular situation again. It's the feeling, connecting that feeling. It's like, oh, I remember one time I kind of felt like this panicky feeling came up when, I got scared at a horror movie or something like that, whatever it is. And then continue to trace it back of what other times. And your mind will bring things to the forefront, and it may be multiple times, maybe just one time, but whatever it is that comes up for you, that is something that you need to look at. It's like, okay, what kind of decisions did I make from that event? What kind of beliefs did I create from that event? How are those beliefs holding me back in today's world? And then being able to make different decisions is how we change the past, by changing how we behave today. And that changes our future, and that becomes something that no longer holds us back. So there you go, guys. I hope that you found that was helpful. If you are just joining in or you are catching this late, you can check out my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. This is where I will upload all of the recordings from the lives that I've done. If there's any particular issues that you guys are struggling with, or you want me to cover how I deal with those kind of things, then let me know, and I'd be happy to share my tips and strategies with that. And while you're on the YouTube channel, you will see the thumbnails as various artwork like I have in the background here that I've done. And you can purchase prints or merchandise with those prints on the links that are in the description comment, okay? And if you are interested in any of the originals, you can send me a message and we can talk about where you want it shipped, okay? We'll talk to you later, and I'll be back again tomorrow night around 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, take care, guys. Have a great night. Bye.